All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Carolyn Dolby, your SpeechTherapyPD.com podcast host for School of Speech. School of Speech is designed for school-based SLPs to come together to discuss current topics, tackle difficult situations, and share our insights. Our goal is to bolster confidence, celebrate our triumphs, and foster a community dedicated to the excellence in the school setting. I am so excited for today's episode, championing change, advocacy strategies for the SLP in the schools. We are so excited that you have joined us today. We're going to dive into the world of advocacy for the school-based clinician. Who doesn't want to explore effective strategies and solutions for improving salaries, benefits, and working conditions? By the end of today, we will be the champions of change, all thanks to our special guest, Julie Malone. All right, but before we get started, I do have some housekeeping. Okay, each of our episodes are 60 minutes and will be offered for 0.1 ASHA CEUs. Let's go through the disclosures. Financial disclosures. We have for Julie, she is a full-time salaried SLP for LMSV School District. She is also receiving an honorarium from Speech Therapy PD for her participation in today's episode. Non-financial, she's an ASHA Special Interest Group 16, School-Based Issues, and the coordinating committee member of SIG 16. She's a pretty big deal. Now, she is also the rep for her local union. So this is why she's great for what we're talking about today. I receive a salary as the district level dysphagia support clinician for my school district here in Texas. I'm also compensated for my graduate courses I teach at the University of Houston. And I'm a consultant for school districts across the nation, supporting their program development and staff training. I receive compensation from SpeechTherapyPD.com for hosting School of Speech. Non-financial, I'm a member of the Texas Speech and Hearing Association's Task Force for Feeding and Swallowing. I volunteer for Feeding Matters, and I'm also a member of ASHA Special Group SIG 16, School-Based Issues, as well as Special Interest Group 13, Swallowing and Swallowing Disorders. Well, without further ado, I'm so excited to welcome our guest, Julie Malone. She is a devoted speech-language pathologist whose background and experience has positioned her as a leader in public schools. Her educational journey began at Indiana University, followed by an internship at the University of Sydney and a master's degree with an emphasis in public schools from NAU, which laid a robust foundation for her career. Justice, equity, and promoting positive change are central to Julie's advocacy efforts. Julie's exceptional negotiation abilities, consensus building attitude, aptitude, and professional education and research development skills have earned her the prestigious Van Hatten Award for contributions to the schools. Well, welcome, Julie. How are you? And we are so lucky to have you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. I'm very happy to be here tonight. That was a mouthful.
I know, but hey, let's see what we've already got. Oh, hey, we've got a ton of people jumping in. Let's take a look for a quick second. Hold on.
Hey.
Oh, California, SLP in California. Allison is I do. Karen Arnett, yep. Leslie Baez, SLP. Oh, it's sounding like great. Cassie, I do. Diana, thank you. Yes. So it's sounding like so far everybody that's jumping in is saying that they do introduce themselves as a speech-language pathologist. This is going to come into play in a minute.
I'm so happy to hear that. You know, when you listen to all the accolades and the different things people have done, I used to be one of the school-based SLPs who would say, well, I really haven't done much. And so let's start right off the bat and say, on your worst day, you need to make a list of the things that you've done, because you're going to be really surprised at just how much you have. And nothing is too small when we're talking about advocacy. And advocacy is really standing up, promoting, championing any cause or policy. And in this case, we're talking about our ability to perform our jobs in the schools. And so I know some of you may have heard me speak before, and a lot of this is not new, because guess what? It works. You don't change things when it works. So I think people really feel like things have to be really complicated to be an advocate. And so let's start with the first question, which is who insists on being called a speech language pathologist?
Mhm.
You know, for a lot of years, I didn't want to ruffle any feathers and I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. And teachers get a little, edgy about the fact that we're not teachers, even though we're not. And I don't care anymore. So I'm a speech language pathologist. I understand that's a mouthful for parents. That's okay. My job is to help promote that. And so that's what I do. I've gone to teachers and said, hey, your report template has me as a speech teacher. I really need it to look like this. And I need it to have a hyphen, and I need it to not have a slash. That's not what my title is. And it's surprising the response that I've got has been like, oh, I just didn't know. Okay, well, now you do. And that's how I want to be introduced. And I think that's a real first step. When you think about teachers, principals, school psychologists, OTs, everybody knows their title. There
Mhm.
doesn't seem to be any question about it. So, that's up to us to advocate for ourselves to be called by our title. And I think that's the easiest thing anybody attending today can do for themselves right off the bat if you're afraid to get started.
Right. Leslie jumped in and had the same thought I did. When we're talking about psychologists, they demand the doctor title and they are given that respect. And Kara just jumped on to say it really irritates her when people say speech teacher or introduce them as speechy. Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, we're adults.
I've been called a speech lady or even just plain speech. And I actually had PTA one year, right? Happy speech, SPEACH on my door one year for Teacher Appreciation Week. I mean, so we have some work to do there. And I'm glad to hear that people are not afraid, because if somebody gets their feelings hurt, I think all you have to do is say, there's nothing wrong with any other profession. But if I called you a firefighter, there's nothing wrong with that, except for it's not what you do. And that's not what I do. I'm a speech language pathologist. I have really specialized skills, and your skills are specialized too. I'm not a teacher. I don't do your skills. So
Right.
I think it's really important that we start right there with that. I think being kind all these years and not wanting to step on toes hasn't helped us.
Right. And if you think about teachers, if somebody called them a babysitter, I've had,
That's a better
right. I
example.
mean, I know I'm taking it way to the, but that has happened. I have heard that, so
For sure.
Alyssa jumped on to say, yep, we have not been in school for as long as we have to be called a speech teacher, because that's not what our degree is. I agree.
So our fundamental issue here really is
Mhm.
respect. Right?
Yes.
I know that all the other settings have some issues that overlap with us for sure. Working conditions, different things. But I think the respect issue is much more unique to school-based SLPs struggling. Nobody understands what we do. They don't understand the value of the education that we have. I mean, our master's degree, we all know, we're all in here. It was hard. It was not very easy. We couldn't do it online while we were working full time and, stuff like that.
Mhm.
It can't be done for our profession. So there has to be a level of respect for our background and our comprehensive knowledge. I mean, birth to death across all of these different disorders. I think even for myself, I couldn't even name off the top of my head every single thing that we impact. And so I think, we've got to do a better job at helping them understand. Teachers do want their students to succeed and do better. And if they could embrace what we do and not look at us as an opportunity for a break, then,
Right.
and not all of them do, but the ones who do, if they could embrace what we actually bring to the table for kids, it's a real game changer, because there are a lot of students who need our support and our help to be successful.
I think you're just stepping right into the next question of why is advocacy essential? Great segue.
Yeah. So, well, I think what we can say is we have seen over the last number of years. I don't know how many veterans we have in here this evening, but I'm getting ready to start my 26.224 year, and I've seen tremendous change in workload, what people expect out of me, the different things. But what I haven't seen is a tremendous change in the level of respect, the understanding of my job, for a lot of people finding a reasonable place to work. I am one of those people who was first put in a custodial closet with the chemicals. So I can relate with lots of people out there who have really not so ideal student learning conditions, meaning your office or your workspace. We shouldn't be talking about this 25, 50 years later. That this is why advocacy matters. I wish I had stood up 26 years ago and said, this is not okay for my students to be in a custodial closet. You don't care about me, that's okay. But we got to care about our kids, and they shouldn't feel less than to be in a place that, nobody else wants to be. And so I think for me, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? We have not made great gains in respect and understanding of our profession, and nobody can take responsibility for that except for us. And so we can either cry about it or we can advocate for ourselves, and that would be my preference, is that we get everybody on board. And when you look at the number of SLPs we have in this country, I know ASHA with audiologists, we have 236,000 members. And I know there are plenty of people that outside of that may not have those certifications, but they're still working in the schools, and that's okay. But think about what our collective voice could do if we're all working towards this goal of respect, better conditions, all of those things.
You just hit something to me that okay. So when you said, instead of fighting for me, I want a better office. No, what you said, what was so powerful was, we need to value our students, because
Right.
let's be honest, administration, I know this sounds ugly, but they don't really care about us per se. They really care about the child. And
Right.
I love that you just gave us a great words to use, a great stance. Is we're not asking it because I deserve the window, the largest office with the windows. No, our students deserve to be educated not in a work. What did you call what you were in a storeroom? What?
Yeah. And by the way, it was so small that rainy days, because in California, everything's outside. They would have to close one door to get in to move the table, and the whole school went through this little hallway thing to go to lunch. So, I mean, it's not just a custodial closet, it's also the rainy day schedule, the lunchroom. I would love to take credit for the terminology, my working conditions or my students' learning conditions, but that really came from Carol Fleming. So I give credit where credit is due. I think everybody should use that terminology. I think it's powerful, and you're absolutely right. Adults don't care about the other adults, but I really hope that adults in charge care about the kids. And you always want to pick the argument that puts you on higher moral ground, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
If you look at
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted you to repeat that, because I want our listeners to really get that working conditions are really our students' learning conditions. Powerful.
correct. Yeah. And if you use that terminology and you are on higher moral ground, whatever your argument is, it's really hard to argue back. Do you think you're going to have administrators say to you, oh, no, you're wrong. It doesn't matter where kids learn. They can learn out on the blacktop, or, they can learn in the middle of the auditorium while there's an assembly going on. Yeah, I don't think that's what they're going to come back with. So you're already setting yourself up for almost a guaranteed acknowledgement. I didn't say yes, but a guaranteed acknowledgement that it's important. And that's the other thing. When you're advocating, you've got to be smart about what you pick, to go after. And so if you go after student outcomes, it's hard to say no to those. It's also really hard to say no to things that are also important to them. So that would be student outcomes, but that would also be a lot of times things that are really important to teachers. If it's something that aligns with us, I call that low-hanging fruit. Go for it. If teachers get on board with something, and I'll give a perfect example. We wanted a change for IEP meetings. We had too many. I know that I'm not the only one. Everybody out there is dying with the number of meetings, the hours involved with each IEP meeting. I mean, that's something that there has been such significant change over the last 26 years or more. with meetings and who has to be there and all the requirements, the number of pages, it's being typed, all of that stuff. Okay, but when you look at that and you say to your special ed administrator, I'm really, tired, this is too much, blah, blah, blah. I'll give you an example. One year, I know that I did 4 40-hour weeks full time of IEP meetings after the 8th hour of my day. And I know because I submitted a time card, which goes into this comment, and that is that nobody wanted to listen when it was special ed. And I don't just mean speech. When it was special ed, nobody wanted to touch it. Teachers started having to come to meetings the last few years mandatorily, right? And it blew up. Oh, it's so many meetings and blah, blah. And my colleagues were upset and they're like, but it's not fair. I go to way more meetings. I said, oh, let them complain. Opportunity and crisis, let them complain. And that got the issue to the table. And we were able to not get the best deal in the world, but we were able to get acknowledgement that after the 8th hour of our day, we work a 7-hour day, once we had put in 1 hour after school, it's all paid on a time card. Originally, it wasn't per diem, but it is now per diem. So our regular rate. And that's how I know that I worked 160 hours. And that doesn't include the extra hour after school. That's just the ones that I got time carded for. A whole month.
Wow.
That's a lot of hours. And by the way, that leads me to the next point for advocacy, and that is data.
Okay.
Data matters too.
Yeah.
Data matters too. So, you think, oh, I don't have time to write this down or keep track of it, but data doesn't lie. So when you're upset or you're in the heat of the moment, and you say, oh my gosh, I go to so many IEP meetings. I'm here every single day after school. You probably can't really back that up. It's a little emotional. But when you say, hey, I want to show you my calendar, like, this is incredible. When I looked at it, I felt like I was doing a lot, but wow, look at this. I think that's something that you have to consider, especially if you're feeling frustrated with something, is start keeping the data on it, because that's how you're going to move it forward.
Absolutely. There's a mantra. We all say it. If it's not documented, it did not happen. And that, right?
Yes.
And
that's true for us as professionals too. It's not just about kids' goals and documentation for Medicaid.
Yeah. Use it for to advocate for our jobs, yeah.
So a couple other things I would say that I think are really important if you're new to advocacy. There's a great book out there called Rules for Radicals by Alinsky. And not all of them necessarily pertain, but there are a lot of really great ones. And one of them is the fear of the threat is greater than the threat itself. And I really like that one because, SLPs usually are pretty quiet. They don't usually rock the boat. They're really hard workers. They're problem solvers. They want to just get stuff done. They're worried about repercussions of not working to the best of their ability. And that's one of the things you have to respect about our profession is just the quality really of the work that you get. And so, when you start looking at that and nobody ever complains, the day you guys decide to start is be very terrifying, because they don't know what they're going to do. It was so already unexpected that you would start to make waves. And so that's a great place to start. I would also encourage you to look into interest-based bargaining, even if you're not on the bargaining team or not on I know not everybody's union, but that's my background, 12 years as a support services rep for no pay. And then almost 3 years as vice president of the Teachers Association with a small stipend. And now I'm back to being a site rep. And so you don't have to necessarily be an important person, right, on your union board to get familiar with interest-based bargaining. And I would encourage you to ask if you have a union or you have some kind of representation to let you attend some trainings on that. And some of the takeaways are, again, that low-hanging fruit, find common ground. So in the case of that IEP story I told, the district wanted IEPs to be held and they wanted teachers to show up. That was their priority. And we shared that priority. We wanted to make sure we met our timelines. We wanted to make sure we got it done. That's where you start the conversation. There were other areas, obviously, we disagreed on, right? But you start with the areas that there's a mutual benefit, and having IEPs done timely is a mutual benefit. And that really opened the door to those conversations. And you have to kind of put yourself in the mindset of the people that you're talking to. If I was sitting in the big chair in the ivory tower, as we like to say,
Right.
then what would my concern be? If I was thinking about my SLPs and I was thinking about caseload and I was thinking about workload or I was thinking about whatever, what would you brainstorm as their issues of concern, and go from there? Because a lot of times you're kind of spot on with what their concerns would be.
And if you think about all the things that we are doing are federally mandated. I mean, especially with,
Absolutely.
that's heavy. I mean, there's a lot of repercussions for our work not being done right
And I'm so
there.
glad you brought that up, because it's like beating a dead horse, right? But it has to be done. I don't get a choice. So teachers can choose how much grading they want to do in a night, or they're going to do this or they're going to do that. They get some options in there that we don't have. If it's due the next day, it doesn't matter that we spent 6 hours on a report on our own time at night trying to get it done because the kid had been absent for 3 weeks before their evaluation was due, right? I mean, we've all been in these tricky
Yeah.
situations that aren't really our fault, but the expectation is we're going to find a solution for it. And I think that's another thing, is that because we're solution oriented, districts really haven't had to feel the pain of what happens when it doesn't get done, because we're doers. And I would never tell anybody to not do their job. I think everybody should do their job. But I think when you've hit your limit, you have to express that you've hit the limit. This is not doable. This is not something that can be done long term. And I don't know about anybody else, but for years I was willing to do anything extra if I got paid per diem, because it used to be like, a substitute rate or a curriculum rate, which was like ridiculous. In California, barely our minimum wage. And so I refuse to do those kind of things. But if they offer me my per diem,
Uh-oh, I think we just lost Julie, but she's going to pop right back on. Here she comes.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. I knew you were going to pop right back on.
So I mean, these things, you can't let them get you down. You have to keep moving things forward in the ways that you can.
Yeah,
I forgot where I was in the process.
that's okay because I want to get into some of these. I mean, we're talking about, what we need to be advocating for. We're respect, understanding our working conditions, and with the focus on that our working conditions are our students' learning conditions. What are some solutions to some of those challenges that we're going to be facing?
So I
Especially-
think you have to really get some people on board that have more juice than we do. And
Okay.
the way you do that, I would say the lowest of that level would be going to your parent teams. So PTO, PTA, none of us want an extra meeting. But if you don't even have to volunteer to be the rep if you have that. And I'm sorry, I know it's different terminology in different places in the country. PTO, PTA, whatever it is, is your parent organization. In my current job, there's somebody in my school that has to attend as one of their adjunct duties on top of their regular daily work. And you don't have to do that, but you can find out when their meetings are. You can ask to be put on an agenda to talk about the services that you provide. I did that many, many years ago. I really wanted, when FM systems like portable ones came out, I
Mm-hmm.
really, really wanted one. And of course, nobody wanted to buy one for me. And so I went to the PTA president and I made my plea. And it was like $149. It wasn't like it was a lot of money. And she goes, well, I really like that. Now, if I got that for you, would you be willing to share that with Micro Society? And I said, absolutely, because I'm not seeing kids during Micro Society. That would be fantastic. Boom. Next thing you know, it's paid for and it's done. And life changed for me as far as acknowledgement with teachers after having that interaction. And that sounds so simple, but I bet you there's a parent on there somewhere that has a kid with speech.
That I wouldn't have even thought of that. That's brilliant. That's brilliant because the parents, I mean, if they're going to those meetings, they're vested, they're wanting to help, and a lot of those parents don't even know we exist.
And who do districts listen to? They don't listen to employees.
No,
They
they're going
listen
to
to
listen
parents.
to the parents.
They're going to listen
Right.
to parents. And if you can be strategic to do it at a time when you know that there's a speech kid
Mm-hmm.
that is being represented in those meetings, it's ideal. I mean, it's one meeting. And that's the thing I'm going to say about advocacy. It's not time free, right? It's
Yeah.
not, you have to have some investment. And sometimes you have to be consistently invested for a period of time. But if you do that, I really promise that you will see results, because when they know you're going to keep coming back,
Kind of
then
like,
it's really hard to ignore you.
yeah, front load it all.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that also goes hand in hand with your school board. And I
Oh,
think that this is an entity that people really, first of all, people are afraid.
mm-hmm.
But I'm going to tell you, at least in California, everybody has the right to speak at a school board meeting on any topic of their choice. You have to walk up to them when you first get there at the beginning of the meeting and ask for a speaker card. You have to tell them who you are. You don't have to say what school you work at. You can say that wherever you live, your city, whatever. But you have to put your topic of what you want to talk about. And at least here, we get 3 minutes. And let me tell you, anybody who's willing to walk in front of a school board and talk for 3 minutes, they get their attention. And usually they can't ask any questions during that time. But I do know, after doing that for a variety of topics, not just advocacy for SLPs, but as VP of the Teachers Association, I would talk on a variety of different things. Or like I champion a dog walk here in San Diego. I have a district team, and that gave me an opportunity to go in front of them on not on a controversial issue or a specific SLP issue, but it gave me an opportunity to, hey, look what I'm doing for our district. This is my name. This is who I am. And I'm really not going away. I come back every year and I talk to you about this. And then I let that be a segue into some other things. And by the way, if any of your colleagues get an award, I don't care if it's a certificate from a parent, go get a speaker card and say, school board, I just wanted you to know Sally Jones got acknowledged by this parent and got this certificate. And I think that the district should be aware and acknowledge this person for their hard work, because SLPs, blah, 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 right? Value of the SLP. I think that those are ways that you can start making those inroads with the people who actually make decisions, because our administrators make some of the decisions, but your school board is the boss of your administrator. And so if they have a differing opinion, that gets really interesting.
I love that because I see on our district website, different teachers are highlighted or this activity was highlighted. I don't often see things that speech paths are doing, and we are amazing. We are doing all sorts of amazing things, and I know that I've even kind of mentioned it to the higher up, and nothing was said. But I like the idea of, you know what, I should have gone to the board and said, hey, listen to what I've done. I think that gave me something to think about, because I was kind of like, I think we should talk more. We should be proud and stand behind all the things that we do, and it should be recognized. I think our accomplishments should definitely be, like I always say, it's not bragging when it's true.
Right. Well, and when you go to a school board and say, I don't know if you realize this, but speech language pathology services are the most targeted service by advocates, lawyers, and court
Mm-hmm.
cases. You think you're going to get somebody to pay attention to you at that moment? Heck yeah, you are.
Right.
Because I don't know that they always know. I don't think districts always share these things, but I think it's fair to say, as the most targeted service in your district, how come we don't get support? I see
Right.
this group getting support and this group getting support, and we're not. Why? Because we're really good at our jobs. That's not really equitable, is it?
Mm-hmm. Oh
And I
my
think
God.
that's important, that you have to highlight these things, and it can't be one person.
Right.
You know, I mean, one of the things I would highly recommend, especially if there's fear, go in a
Mhm.
group. If you have 50 SLPs in your district and you can get 50% of them to show up and where I am a speech language pathologist, or my favorite shirt is watch your language, I'm an SLP. Something that definitely highlights you as a speech language pathologist. They can't just go, I don't know who that person is. There's a bunch of people sitting in the audience. Oh, wow, look, there's a whole group of SLPs here. What's going on? What's happening? And it
Mhm.
only takes one person to talk.
I
And you
think
do that every single meeting.
I love it. I do think, to be honest with you, that there is some fear of getting some pushback from
Retaliation.
retaliation from the coordinator or the lead of the department, I think there is some fear there.
But Carolyn, what you said about it's not bragging if it's true.
Yes. That's
Okay,
okay.
so let's go back to that because if somebody calls you on the carpet, you can say, did I misrepresent the facts? I
Oh,
mean, that was certainly not my intention, right? I mean, I had the best of intentions. I hope you would assume that about me because I assume that of you, that you don't deliberately try to say things that are untrue. So help me understand where I was wrong with the data that I shared or the information that I shared, because I'm happy to go back to the school board and tell them I made a mistake if you can show me where I did it.
love it, Julie. Thank you. Sometimes we just need those words to be like, you're right. I have the right. I am a person. I'm an employee, but but I have the right to stand up to some working conditions. I just went back
And
to
for
that for
people who have contracts and they have
Mhm.
job descriptions, I mean, you need to use that to your advantage. That would be another major point. Know your contract, whatever that is, whether it's a collective bargaining agreement or just a contract or, a job description. You need to know because a lot of times they'll say you have to do something that I haven't seen written down. And one of the things I love to say, this is one of my favorite phrases, is show me where it says in the contract that I'm different.
Ah.
Because if I'm on a teacher contract,
Mm-hmm.
then I have all the same rights and protections. So you show me where it says specifically in the contract, SLPs have to do more meetings than anybody else, or SLPs have to take all their work home, or SLPs have to do, name whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Show me in the contract where it says that. And people have seen me post online. No, I say that all the time. That is my personal phrase.
I love
You
it.
have to hold them accountable to the rules that they already agreed to, which is also in the Rules for Radicals book. Make sure you make them follow their own rules. And, they like to pick and choose when they use some of their rules. And if you're really consistent and say, last time we had this conversation, you said something completely different. So I'm confused. When does this rule apply and when does it not? And, people think that's confrontational. It's being direct.
Mm-hmm.
It's being direct, just like they're going to be very direct with you, I'm sure. And so you have to, you don't want to show fear, right?
Right.
So people always think when they hear me talk, I love to talk in front of people and I like to argue and I like to get in these. No, I hate conflict with a passion. That's not something I like. But what I hate even more is being mistreated.
Sure.
And so you have to draw the line at what you're willing to tolerate. And so I think that that's an important thing for people to realize. If you're getting to the end of your rope, that's not a good thing. Let's head it off before you get to that point. And really, almost everything we ask for, show me how it's not good for kids. Because, Caroline, when I was taking work home, like, doing, grading of tests and everything, scoring tests for 4 hours a night, trying to keep up with 100 plus caseload at one point in my career, and I came in and one of my kids asked me why I was grumpy. And that was an aha moment for me because while the district may not think that the work I take home affects my kids, it 100% affects my kids. I'm tired, I'm drained, and I am not at my best. Do you want me at my best with the students? I want to be at my best with my students.
Right. Which really kind of goes into that workload caseload
Yes.
concept that we really need to be talking about.
And you know what? That's going to be a matter of really educating people. There are people moving that forward. Charlotte Green in Georgia is moving that forward. Not only that, but also not doing billing. because they've looked at the amount of stress it puts on, the amount of direct service it takes away from kids. And here's the thing, she got the data. She got the data to show that it was, and don't quote me because I might be wrong. I went to this presentation last year, but I think it was like at least 5 hours per SLP of direct services lost to bill. And to be honest, I think that's low, but okay, let's go with 5. You take that times 30 SLPs, that's 150 hours of lost time. Now, if you're truly going to be honorable and make it up, how much does that cost you, right? And do you have to have, how many SLPs do you have to fill in the gap for that? And I think when you find out that it's a wash, it's helpful to educate your own district on the fact that, yes, you see this money. Ooh, I want the money. I want the money. Money isn't free, folks.
Yeah.
Money comes at a cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a workload associated with billing and the amount of notes, which by the way, are way more encompassing than I think most SLPs realize. They keep, trying to make us medical, but we're not medical, right? I've been told I'm not medical. And so, you have to really be able to marry those two things together and then bring it back to kids. So my main issue, in addition to my workload with that, is also that it's not good for kids, because if I have 5 kids in a group and I have to take a SOAP note on every single kid on every single session,
Yep.
am I really teaching a skill, or am I taking notes all the time? And I don't think that's a good thing. So I think that those are the kinds of things you can bring back to tag on with your workload. The ASHA workload calculator, it's somewhat customizable, but I'm here to tell you, if you guys have really specific needs with something, call them. They'll change. They'll make a change. I asked for a change in something and I got it. And they were like, we don't really want to share this with people. And I said, well, I don't know why not, but okay, I don't care. This is what I want and I got it. And so we've used it. And I think that, if that doesn't work for you, use it as your start off point. But again, it comes back to the data.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I get questioned about where my data came from or how I came up with it. So one of the things I pre-thought before we started taking those workload surveys and calculators and things was, what grief am I going to get when I bring this to them? What are they going to say to me about how I doctored this information? And not to be mean, but they're trying to do it with the least amount of money. I get it. They have a job to do, but so do I. And so what we did is, at the start of the year, we selected 3 random weeks throughout the school year that everybody was going to do a 1-week calculator. And the purpose in that is, we know that, there are certain times that you're exceptionally busy, right? Your transition times and stuff like that. So you definitely want something in that area, but it's not each SLP picking their busiest week to present. And they can't say that you did that when everybody does the same 3 weeks, because our calendars aren't the same. And so when you take that data forward, you've already blown that argument right out of the water.
That's fabulous. That's perfect, right? Yeah. You're showing the data and the validity of that data. I love
Absolutely. And so if they say, how did you pick those weeks? I don't know. We had SLPs raise their hand and we're like, what does this week look like? Oh, that's parent conference week. That's probably not a great week to show anything. Okay, we're going to ixnay that one, right? And, that kind of thing. Oh, we had a break, so we couldn't do one in this trimester because of the way the break held. Whatever you have to do. But I think when it's random and they aren't the same from year to year, and we do them pretty much every year because I think the workload changes from year to year.
Sure.
I think what you'll find when you do one of them, whether, I know North Carolina, Mike Makish was talking, he's the school finance committee chair right now. He's talking about North Carolina moving to a workload model, and they're trying some different things. I know they're working on some MTSS stuff. There are a lot of states that already have stuff in progress. Ohio has, in my opinion, something really complicated because I've not been trained on it, but it's also very thorough with weighting and all of this stuff. Do a Google search, because there are people who are doing it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. But when you take a hard look, at least on the ASHA workload calculator, the little circle graph at the top, when it shows your pie graph of how your time's divided up, when you show that 52% of your time is spent on mandatory tasks that are paperwork, I think that's really telling, right? That even I really expected that my student contact hours were going to be the largest percentage of the pie, and they're not. It's mandatory compliance. I think that's the word that's used on the calculator, is compliance activities. And I think that might be the next step for a school board meeting, is to say, hey, I just wanted to share this with you. I don't know if you realize we're a federally mandated service, and we don't get a lot of choices in how things happen because there are these mandates. But I think it's important that you know that we spend 50% of our time doing mandatory paperwork activities. And oh, by the way, those are prioritized over actually seeing kids, because that's what we get called on the carpet for.
And how is that working at the top of our license? How is that
Correct.
being a speech language pathologist?
Right,
Right?
because they have a SLPA, right? And we don't have them anymore, because when they realized they couldn't use them to reduce our caseload, then they got rid of them. But you're
They got
right.
rid
So
of your SLPA. We call them SLPAs, and you call them, I
yeah,
love you flip it. So you got rid of all your SLPAs?
yeah, there was no conversation about it either. They were just gone. Yeah, it was pretty incredible. And so, but here's the thing, they wanted to use it for the wrong reason. And that was to reduce the caseload, to say that we can keep you really, really high. So in my county where I am, we have a SLPA, so a special education local plan area that's in charge of special ed for any number of districts, depending on where you are. And they have a 55 average for that in our state education code. Well, teachers get a nice little list every week or every day at the beginning of the school year to talk about averages and make sure everybody's fair and whatever. I've never had one of those in almost 27 years, right? So I think that's another question, is if this is what the ed code is, then I want to see the numbers. So who's going to start showing me these numbers? But if ed code says 55 and you're going to use a SLPA to try to reduce that, and they say you can't do that, well, then we're just going to take the SLPA away. And really not much changed with caseload.
Wow.
So it's sad, but it speaks to what you said, which is working to the top of our license. And I think many people are afraid to take a SLPA, an intern, whatever, because the part of the job we love is working with kids. And so
Exactly.
then you're afraid to take any help that's offered, because that means I just get to sit and do paperwork, which I don't really like to do. I can only give up the part that I think is the most important, which is the contact with kids. And you're right. That should be where our focus should be, with kids, and not on paperwork. I mean, I feel like some of the meeting notices and things like that, do you have to be an SLP to do that? I don't think so. But I sure need to be an SLP to assess a student as I'm going through their weekly minutes and figuring out where they've made progress and where they're still lagging behind. Who can do that better than me, right? Nobody. Or
Hey,
you, right?
well, yeah, right. Hey, Julie, Lauren Long, she just asked a question, if you don't mind it, just right
Yeah.
about SLPAs. She was wondering, why would an SLPA be able to reduce a caseload?
So I think that's a myth with administrators, that if they give you this person that makes much less money than you, kind of like they throw a paraprofessional into a classroom when their numbers get too high, that they'll get you to stop complaining about your caseload, or not meeting the ed code or whatever it is, and that they can see the kids and you can do this other stuff, and then it's you kind of have a status quo. But the states that have it written in that say I can't have 100 kids even if I have a SLPA, because really what they're doing is they're really maxing both of you out at the same time. And now you have a supervisory task added to your plate.
Our SLPAs in our district, actually, they get paid pretty similar to us. They just don't get the stipends that we have. Yeah. Yeah.
That's impressive. I love that.
Yeah.
They play a valuable role, and I certainly don't want to minimize that at all. I love the SLPAs that I had. One of them went on to become an AT and AAC specialist with a master's. I mean, so we're talking like what a loss for us, but what a great gain for AT. These are smart people. These are smart people that really are highly skilled too. Not the same skill set as us, so I'm not usually worried. right? And I think people shouldn't be worried about SLPAs taking their job. That's the
No.
value of the Cs. That's the value of your license. That's the value of your teaching credential, whatever you have in your state. But they do provide a wonderful service. And, what I would say is, hey, if these people know my kids and I end up being out sick, at least kids are getting some therapy, right? I'm going to be really happy with that. That if it's not me, it's somebody else who's qualified and not some random person.
Sure. Sure.
But, the other piece comes in about billing. And so,
Mhm.
if SLPAs can't bill, that's the other piece I think districts kind of caught on to was, oh, wow, well, we want the SLP to see them because they can bill.
Right. Okay. Okay. All
That's
right.
a whole nother, that could be a whole podcast in itself, is talking
I
about
was
Medicaid.
just for sure. Absolutely. Which kind of Medicaid? Well, let's get into benefits.
Yeah. So
I was just
I
thinking,
think,
I don't know, it just made me think Medicaid. Okay, benefits.
yeah, benefits. So, union wise, those kind of all fit into a box: salary, wages, working conditions, and
Yep.
benefits. So, most of the time those are tied to whatever major group you have, your teachers or
Mhm.
whatever. But you should have some say with whoever your bargaining entity is as to what those are. And so, that would be your health care. And I know sometimes we have people working part-time or whatever, and they don't want to give you health care because you're not working full-time. Well, I'd encourage you, once again, show me where it says that in the contract. Because if you'll do it for a teacher, then you need to do it for me, right? Those kind of things. I also think maybe people are misled by the word benefits, thinking maybe stipends. So let me switch gears a little bit to
Okay.
stipend. And depending on where you work and whether you're paying into Social Security or whether you're paying into a teacher's retirement system, these are really important questions for new to the field, new to the school people to ask. Because if you decide this isn't for you, either way, whether it's outside the schools or inside the schools, you decide it's not for you, you may be leaving a lot of retirement money on the table. And I think that's important. Because schools revolve around teachers, teachers generally don't have opportunities for jobs outside of schools. And
Right.
so this where, again, we're a square peg, right, in a round hole. And they don't understand that we've done per diem at the hospital, or we've worked at a SNF, or we've been in a private clinic. And now when we come to the schools, we lose a piece of our retirement because you can't have the teacher's state retirement and Social Security. It's called the Windfall Act. And if you aren't familiar with that,
Absolutely.
I encourage you to look into it because it's important to know. But these are things that, I have brought up with my own association about things that are really unfair in the way that, we get treated if we try to get out of this particular setting either way and go to another one. It's not always that simplistic. So you always want to look at, because I consider that a benefit, right, to have a retirement. I
Mhm.
would make sure that you look at that, but along those same lines, you need to understand whatever retirement system you're in, how stipends impact that. So for me personally, they can't be used towards retirement. So to be honest, I'd rather have them tack $1,000 onto my salary every year as part of my salary than to add it as a stipend, because that will compound over time if it's part of your salary and really increase your retirement benefits. But if you do it as a stipend, it's just that amount of money and it never compounds. So, and that's the same with kind of any stipend or sometimes even extra hourly, like time card work. In California, there's a supplemental, which is not terrible. It's not as good as the other, but it's a supplemental. And there's a little bit of money there. But if you're going to do, like, a lot of times they'll say, oh, you're at 60% and I really need you for an extra 10% this year. I'm just going to time card you. Do your homework and figure out how that impacts you financially long term, because it may be like, oh yeah, I really want that extra 10%, so I'm going to take it on a time card. But if that doesn't impact your retirement, that'll hurt you down the road. So those kind of benefits and stipends, I think, are important for people to be aware of, whatever the protocols are in your state. And if you don't know, reach out and ask somebody.
Right. It should be transparent.
It
And
should be, but it's not.
I know it's not. And you want to talk to, I know that you advocate in your district for the wage salary increase. So impressive.
Yeah,
Shout out to you.
that's old now.
Oh, but people need to hear it.
Okay, so again, it comes to that low hanging fruit. What are the combined interests, the mutual interests that you have? And what we were having a problem with was hiring SLPs. Imagine
Right.
that. So we came to the table and we had these conversations, and basically I educated them on the value of the SLP, why we're unique, why they can't just find somebody, why they can't just hire some random person to do my job. Because, that was, these things are always conversations. It's kind of comical, but not.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, we decided that we had a mutual interest, that we had enough staff,
Mm-hmm.
and that when they don't have enough staff and don't meet timelines, that affects the district. When we don't have enough staff, it affects your SLPs who are asked to do double duty and are very stressed. Or we have kids that aren't getting seen, and we know that that's a really bad recipe. So
Right.
we use that as kind of a jump off point. There were a lot of other pieces to that. If anybody's interested in that, I can always share some other stuff. But the bottom line is, we decided, how can we make this attractive? And I don't know if today I would do it the same way, because we have a different generation coming up that values a work-life balance more than the money. So, but I will say that 10 plus years ago, we were valuing the money. And so what we were able to negotiate, and again, this came in pieces, so there's a patience factor here.
Okay.
The first piece was saying, we're going to give any SLP that comes in a 10-year bump on the teacher's salary schedule. So if you're a brand new CF, you're going to start at year 10 on the salary schedule. Now, I wanted our own salary schedule. They weren't going to budge on that. Okay, no problem. Okay, remember, opportunity in crisis, we take what we get, and then we keep moving it forward as things happen. And the great thing that happened was our state teachers association said, you can't have an asterisk and have a different amount for one group on that schedule. That's not appropriate. Boom, we had our own scale. Okay, so in my district, and I know this is going to shock people who live in more rural places, okay, but it's almost a $20,000 bump for a brand new SLP to start with us. So guess what? We don't really have a problem hiring.
I love it. I wanted you to say it. I know I put you on the spot on that, but when I saw that, I was like, I love it. I think we need to be.
And guess what? The other districts, because they have these comparables, they're all pretty much doing the same thing. So we're not unique anymore, which makes it a little bit more of a challenge to get those first round draft picks, as my district likes to say all the time. So now they're having to look at what other things they can do. And that then circles right back to workload, because I think that's what our up and coming SLPs are going to be more concerned about.
Okay.
Is this a doable job for me? So when you go to a job interview, whether you're new or old, these are the kind of questions you want to be asking them. And I would want specific answers, not, well, most of the time. No, what does that really look like? I want to know, what does your workload look like? What is the compensation for all the extra hours? Those kind of things, because if you're going to do the work, even if you don't really want to, you should at least get compensated.
Right? I am loving everything that you are laying on us today, but I'm wondering, do you have a success story that you can share with us? Kind of bring it all together.
Oh, I do.
Okay.
I am so proud to share this one, because I get calls from random people who know somebody who knows me or something, hey, I have concerns, I have questions about advocacy. Okay, great. Well, I got one from right here in my home county. And I'm going to give a shout out to Kristen Childs, because she said I could share this with you, and she's very excited. But a year ago, I talked to her about some of these very same things I've talked about that people think are too simplistic to work. Let's start with the school board meetings. She told me that they attended every regularly scheduled school board meeting. They had between 4 and 10 SLPs at every one of those meetings with their specialty shirts on. And one person took a speaker card and talked about the value of the SLP at every single school board meeting. So let's say there were 10, because that's usually typical, and there might have been 12, I don't know, but let's say 10, that's 30 minutes of dedicated time that they have to listen to you talk about SLP's value, right? And so as a result, some really interesting things happen. And I wish I had done something this big, because honestly, I couldn't be more excited about the results she got. I mean, it was phenomenal. So as a result of going to all of those meetings and educating the school board, they clearly were listening, because she had to file a personal grievance for having to do 2 private school evaluations on top of probably an over caseload situation. And I'm trying to remember, it's like 22.9 hours extra. And she asked them to pay her for it. And they said, it's part of your job description. And I'm so proud, because she said she filed a grievance. And you have to be brave. I filed several grievances myself over the years. Actually, I think 3 at one time, actually. But this is big, because when she filed this grievance, there's different levels of grievance. And by the time you get to level 3, it's pretty serious. And yet they haven't come to an agreement. And now it has to go to the school board for approval of whatever the district wants to do to remedy it, right? And so the district was holding firm. They were not going to pay her. This was part of her workload. She wasn't going to get paid. And the school board not only said, absolutely not, you are going to pay her for those hours. And guys, this is huge. You will open bargaining next year, and you will open this topic of how many hours of extra work is done after the contract. I was blown away, absolutely blown away. But that wasn't the end of it. They have a group grievance about not having their vacancies filled and asking them. That's still in process.
Ooh.
But she said, we didn't get everything we want, but we saw the most movement we've ever seen. And that was followed up by stipends for all of their special education people. I think it was $1,000. That included any ed specialists, psychologists, etc. They didn't get the billing stipend that they wanted, but that's still on the table and they're working for it. But one of the things she said that came from a town hall was that she was reminded that we have to stay engaged and keep trying for more every year. And boom, if you walk away with something tonight, I think that's it. It's not a one and done. This is a process, and it's unfortunately slow. But in 1 year to get that?
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Do you mind backing up a minute? Linda had a question, and she wanted you to repeat what you said about getting a different salary schedule in her district. My district does what yours did at first. We are on the same teacher salary schedule, but we have different steps.
Right. So we were told, at least in California, that that's inappropriate, that you can't have asterisks and different things on a salary schedule, that if it's it needs to be a different schedule. So if you're not unionized, I would reach out to whoever else helps you with your bargaining and talk and look through ed code or whatever and see if there's any loophole that you can go after that gives you a separate salary schedule. But I would tell you to have a conversation with your district about the fact that newly graduating SLPs are looking for that. And if they go to a website to take a job and they don't see it, they're probably going to move on to the next district. They may not even be making more money somewhere else, but they want to know that they're going to be acknowledged on their own schedule. And that's huge in itself.
Linda just asked, she's also in California with you and in a union. And she said, who told you guys that it wasn't supposed to be like that?
CTA, California Teachers Association.
Okay.
Yeah. And so again, like you go after one thing and you're just chipping, right? And that's the long game, always the long game. I'm going to do this today. How is that going to affect me down the road? And this is a perfect example of that. You didn't get what you wanted initially, but it came.
Oh, Linda says, thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, Julie, I know that this was kind of a heavy topic, but man, I feel like you have given us so much. You've given us areas that we know that we need to advocate for. Things that have really stood out was just that workload. I mean, the working conditions, it's learning conditions, things like that. I love what you shared with us, just opening our eyes and actually empowering us that we have our rights. We do have rights. And our rights
of all people, shouldn't we have a voice? SLPs should have a voice.
Right. We wear it on our shirts. We need to be walking the walk, not just talking the talk, right?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what?
Um,
Let me edit this part for me and say, write speech hyphen language pathologist on your board. I do
Say
it,
that
and my
again.
kids will say, put your title,
Oh,
your initials. And I have kids say, what does that mean? Oh, let me tell you what MS means. Look at the school that had to happen, because some of my kids don't even know the process, right? And then I talk about my CCC and I tell them, I worked really hard to get this, and that's why it's on my board, because I'm proud. I'm really proud of this because I worked hard for it. And whatever job you pick, I would encourage you to make sure you tell people what you do. You should be proud.
loud and proud. I love it. Yes, right. We need to respect ourselves, respect what we do. We need to be working at the top of our license. And the only way we can continue to do that is if everybody understands what we do. We aren't a speechy. We aren't just
No.
an extension. We are an entity that is desperately needed, and we provide a service that is unbelievable. I love
We
it.
change lives. We change lives. And Sharon McLeod will tell you that communication is a human right.
Yeah.
It's a human right. And this is what we provide.
You know what? Lisa Chatler just said thank you for bringing Julie to inspire, motivate, and advocate for this profession. I agree. You are amazing. We are so lucky to have you, Julie. I really appreciate everything that you've brought to our table for us to take back with us. I feel more empowered. I hope everybody listening also feels empowered. I know that we're kind of towards the end, and I hate it. I hate for it to end. I am so pleased. We are so happy. Thank you, Julie, again, for all that you've done and your time that you've taken with us. This has been so informational. Oh, Abby, thank you. Yeah, you have lifted us up. I love it. I love it.
Thank you,
All right,
Carolyn. I
everyone.
appreciate it.
Oh, I love it. All right, everyone. I love it. Thank you, Julie. Bye, everyone.